Hey guys, I'm Law, and this is What If Deku Stayed Quirkless and Went to Shiketsu High. Anyways, hope you enjoy. So how this story is gonna go is that we meet a 4-year-old Izuku Midoriya watching a video of his favorite hero All Might saving the lives of multiple people from a fire by carrying them on his back. Never fear, because I am here. Every time Izuku would hear those words, he would get a sparkle in his eyes and think to himself how cool it would be to be a hero saving lives. Mom, when I get a quirk, I want to be just like him, Deku said to his mom, Inko. A few days later, Inko would take Deku to the quirk doctor to find what his quirk was, but unfortunately for Deku, the doctor would tell him that he didn't have a quirk. Deku hearing this would be crushed and think to himself that he can't be a hero because he didn't have a quirk. Deku and Inko would go home, and a couple of minutes later after arriving, Deku would be watching the same video of seeing All Might saving people, and Inko would walk in his room, seeing Deku turn to her with tears in his eyes, saying, "Can I be a hero, Mom?" Inko would only respond by suddenly hugging him and telling Deku that she was sorry. The next day, Deku would be in school, and Izuku's quote-unquote childhood friend, Bakugo, would ask Deku what his quirk was, to which Deku responded that he didn't have one. This would be where the bullying starts towards Deku, as both Bakugo and his goons would start calling Deku names such as loser, nerd, a quirkless nobody, etc. And they would also occasionally beat Deku up just because he didn't have a quirk, discouraging Deku even more, making him think that he couldn't be a hero. One day, Deku would be walking near a playground, and he would see Bakugo and his two goons picking on a kid were about to start beating the kid up. Deku saw this and stepped between Bakugo and the kid. Deku tried to tell Bakugo to stop, that this is not what a hero would do. "Why would I listen to a quirkless loser, Deku?" Bakugo said, and proceeded to hit Deku with a small explosion to his chest, with Bakugo's lackeys also proceeding to beat up Deku. Deku was still standing, barely, but was injured. Bakugo was then about to hit Deku with another explosion, but Deku, wanting to defend himself, barely dodged the explosion that was coming to his chest and punched Bakugo in the face, making Bakugo stumble back, touching his cheek in pain. Bakugo and his lackeys then proceeded to beat up Deku even more, with Deku fighting back with all his might, getting a couple of punches in at Bakugo and his lackeys. But he would inevitably lose and be beat until he was unconscious with bruises all over his face and body. He woke up 5 minutes later on the ground and was about to limp his way home until he noticed the kid was still in the same spot. The kid then walked to Deku and began to thank him for saving him from getting beat up. "It's no problem," Deku said. "No, seriously, thank you. Those three guys ganged up on you and you still fought back to save me. So thank you very much," the kid exclaimed. "You're welcome," Deku said with a small smile, and then continued to walk home. When he got home, Inko saw the state that he was in and began to treat his injuries. She would also ask what would happen, and Deku would lie, saying he fell on some stairs, because he didn't want to bring Inko into him being bullied. Inko tried to press forward, but left it at that, as Deku would not tell her what happened. Deku would be in his room, lying on his bed, thinking to himself that he saved someone, even though he didn't have a quirk. He began to ponder the idea of being a hero without a quirk. Deku then sprung up from his bed, with a determined look on his face, and decided that he'd become a hero even if he didn't have a quirk. Deku would begin his training until his injuries were completely healed, which took about a week. Deku's training regimen would consist of bodyweight exercises such as push-ups, sit-ups, squats, pull-ups, running laps, etc. He would also begin to practice parkour, as it would also help increase his agility, stamina, and reflexes, increasing the intensity of exercises once it became too easy for him. Deku would still get bullied by being called names from his peers, but Deku would ignore them and continue his training. By the age of 8, Deku would enroll in different martial arts such as karate, boxing, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, Krav Maga, etc. As soon as he got good at one martial art and was able to beat most of the other students, he would leave and then proceed to try a new style. He would train every week from Monday to Friday and spend the weekends studying, doing some light parkour, write analysis of heroes and villains in his notebook, and also do some jogging. Inka would see this and would be proud of Deku for working towards his dream, but she would also be concerned and sometimes thought that Deku was going too far with his training. But as long as he was happy and not hurting himself, she would do everything she could to support him. 6 years later, Deku would be 14 years old, as his appearance would be a ripped body with not too big or not too small muscles, like Grey Fullbuster in this picture. He would also be 3 inches taller than he was in canon, now 5 foot 8 inches tall, as his green hair was exactly the same as in canon. Deku would be in class, as the teacher would come inside with a bunch of papers in his hand telling all the students that they need to fill out these career forms. He then suddenly threw the papers in the air and said, "Why even bother? I know you all want to be heroes." After he said that, the class then erupted with students showing off their quirks, besides 2 students. "Ha, come on Teach, don't lump me in with these extras. I'm obviously the one who's gonna go to UA from this crappy school. I'm gonna surpass All Might and become the richest hero ever," Bakugo exclaimed while standing on his table. "Ah, Izuku, I see you're also applying to UA," the teacher said. All the students looked at Deku and began to burst out laughing, one of them saying that there's no way that Izuku could become a hero without a quirk. Izuku was used to this and had a neutral expression on his face, but deep down inside, the words still kind of hurt. Bakugo rushed to Deku's desk and used an explosion on the desk, making Deku flinch, but he quickly regained his composure. Bakugo then started insulting Deku, saying there's no way a quirkless nobody can get into UA or become a hero for that matter. Deku's only response was, "I can still try, Kachan." Bakugo was about to yell something else, but the teacher spoke before him and told everyone to settle down, and they began class. Once school was finished, Deku left as quickly as possible as he wanted to start training and do some studying as soon as he got home. As Deku was practicing his parkour while going home, he came across an isolated location in a tunnel. While he was running, he heard a sludge sound behind him and immediately turned to see a sludge villain come out of a manhole towards Deku. Deku reacted fast and jumped back as to not get caught. The sludge villain then began to attack Deku, trying to get a hold of his body, but Deku kept dodging with ease. He couldn't find a way to attack him without getting caught in the sludge. Deku then saw a pipe near him and had an idea to throw his open bag towards the sludge villain, distracting him, as Deku got the metal pipe and started hitting the sludge villain's sludge away from him, making him smaller, as once he was small enough, he would use the opportunity to run away. Just as Deku was about to get his last hit in, All Might came out of the manhole, and once he saw the sludge villain, significantly smaller, he used the half-hearted Texas Smash to defeat the sludge villain, grabbing Deku so he wouldn't get blown away. Deku was going all fanboy, and would ask All Might for an autograph once he finished capturing the sludge villain in a bottle, which All Might kindly gave his signature smile. Before All Might could leave, Deku asked All Might a question, that is if he could become a hero without having a quirk. All Might noticed that Deku must have made the sludge villain significantly smaller and as he was holding a pipe when he saw him. He would respond with a maybe, but not likely, but also say not likely. And also tell Deku that if he wanted to help people, he should become a police officer or a doctor, that those are respectable jobs. Then All Might would take his leave with the captured sludge villain. Deku would be left feeling down after hearing this. After hearing his favorite villain tell him that he couldn't become a hero, and begin to pack his stuff and go home. Even after being told that, Deku was still determined to become a hero, and would start to train, study, and think of ways to fight villains in the future, as in the next 6 months the entrance exams for UA would begin. Deku would train and study rigorously for those months. In the 3rd month, Deku heard that there was a teens martial arts tournament where the prize money was $50,000, also over 5 million yen. to which Deku would enter as he wanted to test his combat abilities. Deku fought different kinds of opponents, some physically stronger, some with better defense, some faster, etc. But Deku would beat all of them, barely winning his last 2 matches. As Deku learned to adapt to a person's fighting style, I noticed as once he fought each opponent, there was always a weakness somewhere in an opponent, whether physically or mentally. Deku would use the money that he got to buy weights, fighting equipment, and weapons so that he can practice with the weapons, being a staff, eskrime sticks, a wooden sword, throwing knives, and brass knuckles. Deku also tried to give the rest of the money to Inko, but she convinced him that he should keep the money for himself, so Deku decided to save the money in case of an emergency. Deku would still continue his training, increasing the intensity, resting every weekend to study. Deku during the 6 months would be strong enough to bench press over 650 pounds, aka 295 kilograms, with almost no difficulty. He'd be fast enough to keep up with a car, destroy brick walls with a few punches, and jump to the second floor of a building with ease. It was the 7th month, and Deku would decide that he had to go on a 2-month training trip in the forest to hopefully get more skills. After hours of convincing Inko, Deku left the next day with his bag packed. Deku arrived at the forest by taking a bus halfway and started running the rest. Once he was in the forest, he began to set up camp. After he finished, he looked around the forest, finding which locations were safe, where to get water, and where to set up traps. Thanks to a survival book he read, he had an understanding of how to survive in the forest. During those 2 months, Deku would learn how to hide his presence while hunting animals. He will also be able to sense bloodlust and send bloodlust himself, learning to take down bigger and wilder animals such as bears without the need of a weapon, etc. As once those 2 months were over, Deku went back home by running and walking there, not taking a bus this time. His hair grew longer and he was a little more muscular than he originally was, kind of like Shiryu from One Punch Man or this drawing of Soke from Free, but not too much muscular. As Deku would arrive in his house, Inko would see him and would almost mistake him for a different person, not necessarily because of his appearance, but by his presence and aura. Inko would give her son a big hug when he got back, even if he was a little dirty. He quickly showered, got changed. Deku then spent the last months focusing on technique of his fighting styles, doing some light exercises, and continued to study, as he would spend the rest of his free time watching TV or spending his time with his mom. It was the day of the entrance exams, and Deku would be feeling a bit on edge, but hid his nervousness with a look of determination as he walked towards UA, the same school All Might went to. Deku wouldn't meet Uraraka as he didn't trip when entering the building. He made his way to the exam hall, where President Mike would explain there were 2 tests, one a written test, and one the second being tasked to destroy robots and collect as many points as possible. The exam would begin and Deku would ace the written test, scoring 100%. The second test would begin and everyone would be at the starting line. Deku, wearing his green tracksuit, his hair tied back, and some bandages wrapped around his fists, would be doing some stretches. President Mike would then yell, "Go, go, go, there's no countdown in a real battle," as then all the students would start running towards the gates and begin destroying robots. Deku would destroy robots by throwing punches, kicks, and ripping wires from them, and he would also save some people from other robots. The zero-pointer would arrive, making all the students run away, including Deku, until he heard a cry for help. He saw Uraraka trapped under some rubble and ran as fast as he could towards her, using the momentum to kick the rubble and free her. The zero-pointer was closing in fast, which made Deku carry Uraraka and run as fast as possible to get away from the zero-pointer, bringing her to a safe location until the time for the test was over. Deku took Uraraka to Recovery Girl, and before Deku could leave, Uraraka would say thank you, to which Deku would smile and say, "You're welcome," and leave. A week later, Deku would be in his room doing some weighted handstand push-ups until Inko would come in saying he got 2 letters from UA and Shiketsu High. Being confused, he would take the 2 letters and Inko would leave his room for him to read the letters himself. Deku first opened the UA letter, as he was really eager to hear what they said. There would be a hologram of All Might telling Izuku he had the highest score in the written test and the robot test, scoring 101 points, with 25 robot points destroyed and 76 rescue points. However, All Might would tell him that he couldn't be placed in the hero course, giving a vague answer about his safety. Deku knew it was because he didn't have a quirk. The reason why they couldn't allow him is because when some of the heroes saw Izuku in the test and noticed in his profile that he didn't have a quirk, about the dangers of putting a quirkless boy in the hero course, but some wanted Deku to stay. Some heroes including Aizawa, All Might, and even some part of Nezu thought that Izuku had great potential and should be put in the hero course, but Nezu was soundly outruled, as Deku was not to be put in the hero course. Deku could barely hear what All Might was saying about being in general studies because Deku was in so much shock and grief that he had tears in his eyes, thinking to himself that he could not be a hero and questioned if everything he had done until this point was a complete waste of time, as Deku would start to cry for at least 30 minutes lying on his bed. After he was finished, he then remembered that he still had the letter from Shiketsu High. He opened it to say Deku had been accepted to take a recommendation test in Shiketsu High for the hero course that would be taking place next week. Deku continued reading the letter that said one of Shiketsu's teachers saw Deku's performance and would be impressed, and also noticed that this could apply to Shiketsu High, probably as a second choice, and would tell the principal they need to recommend this kid by any chance he changes his mind or isn't going to UA. Deku would read the letter over and over again, thinking to himself that he should accept the offer. In retrospect, Shiketsu was still a prestigious school, where many great pro heroes went to, such as Hawks, Gang Orca, etc. Plus, they did mention that in the brochure that Shiketsu and UA would be doing some joint events together. Deku was still holding the paper, regaining his resolve, as he thought that even though he couldn't go to the same school as All Might, he would still become a pro hero. He then went out of his room to tell Inko he didn't get into the hero course of UA, but then said with a small smile on his face that he got a recommendation letter from Shiketsu that he would be allowed to take a recommendation test next week. Inko would be sad seeing Deku couldn't get into the hero course of UA, but would be happy and proud to hear that he got a recommendation from Shiketsu. Inko would then make Izuku's favorite meal to cheer him up for not getting into UA's hero course. Deku would thank her for the food, as a couple of hours later they would both go to bed. Deku would continue his training and studying until it was the day of the Shiketsu recommendation test. Anyways, that's it for now. Well, obviously this part didn't involve much Shiketsu. This is really just I guess the prologue, or not really the prologue, just what Deku been doing all this time before he goes into Shiketsu. And yeah, anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you later. Peace.